The winter winds of Earth howled against the towering spires of the intergalactic embassy, a colossal structure that bridged worlds both literally and figuratively. Snowflakes, delicate and relentless, pressed against the transparent aluminum walls of the observation deck, creating a mesmerizing dance of white against the cold void of space visible beyond. Inside, beneath the opulent glow of crystalline chandeliers that refracted light into 1,000 prismatic shards, Lyra stood alone in her wedding dress. The gown was a masterpiece of intercultural artistry, white lace cascading in intricate patterns over her blue skin, which marked her unmistakably as an Illyrian. Her pointed ears, a hallmark of her heritage, trembled slightly as the echoes of laughter reverberated from the throne room beyond. King Stan's rejection had been public, cutting, and final. "Too abundant for a king's bride," he had proclaimed, his voice booming with aristocratic disdain. "Too soft for a warrior's lineage." The words lingered in the air like a toxic fog, poisoning the atmosphere of what was meant to be a union of planets. But in the shadowed corner of a rusted starship component, discarded like forgotten history, a human mechanic with oil-stained hands paused his work. His eyes, sharp and discerning, fixed not on her shame or the spectacle of her humiliation, but on something the entire galaxy had failed to see: the quiet strength in her posture, the intelligence in her gaze, the potential that others dismissed as weakness. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love hearing from you. The Naltherian embassy stood as a monument to contradiction, erected on Earth's soil, yet meticulously designed to mimic the underwater palaces on Thera Prime. Holographic water cascaded down the walls in illusory torrents, shimmering with bioluminescent algae that glowed in hues of teal and indigo. The air was thick with the scent of salt and specialized preservatives, engineered to allow Nalarians to breathe comfortably in an otherwise hostile terrestrial environment. Lyra's slender fingers traced the delicate lacework of her gown, each thread woven by her mother's own hands in a labor of love that spanned weeks. The dress honored both worlds, earthly tradition in its elegant, flowing cut that evoked Victorian bridal gowns, and Nalarian heritage in its bioluminescent threading that pulsed faintly with her heartbeat, a living embroidery that responded to her emotions. But now those pulses were erratic and frantic, broadcasting her inner turmoil to anyone who cared to notice. Through the grand archway, she could glimpse the assembled court, a sea of elaborate robes, adaptive armors, and jeweled headdresses. Kingston occupied the central dais, his imposing form wrapped in adaptive armor that shifted colors to match his mood, currently a stern metallic gray. "I will not bind my lineage to weakness," he had declared earlier, his voice echoing to the hall like a decree from the gods. Look at her, soft where she should be sharp. The royal line required perfection, not abundance. The court had laughed, a ripple of amusement that started with his closest advisors and spread like wildfire. Not all of them joined in, but enough to make the rejection sting deeper, a collective dismissal of her worth. She turned away before the tears could fall, her vision blurring as she moved through the corridor toward the maintenance sector. Here, the beautiful illusions gave way to raw machinery, exposed conduits, humming generators, and the faint ozone tang of welding torches. She didn't expect to find anyone there, seeking solitude in the grit and grime. But there he was, a human man, perhaps 30 years old, kneeling beside a massive engine component that looked like it had been salvaged from a derelict freighter. His dark hair was tied back carelessly in a ponytail, strands escaping to frame his face, and his clothes were practical. Coveralls stained with grease, heavy boots scuffed from endless shifts. He was welding something, the torch in his hand casting dancing shadows across the bulkheads, sparks flying like miniature stars. He looked up as she entered, his gray eyes meeting hers without a trace of pity or scorn. "You shouldn't be down here," he said, his voice carrying no judgment, only a practical concern. "Pretty dress like that near all this machinery. It'll get ruined." "I needed to be somewhere real," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the equipment. The words surprised even her. She hadn't meant to speak them aloud. The mechanic nodded, as if he understood completely. He lowered his torch, extinguishing the flame with a flick of his wrist, and stood up, wiping his hands on a rag that did little to remove the oil. Garrett, he introduced himself. Maintenance Division. Lyra, she replied, though she knew it was unnecessary. I know. Everyone knows. Something flickered in his gray eyes. Empathy, perhaps, or recognition. I heard what the king said, he admitted, leaning against the engine component. And I thought, here's a room full of people who've never built anything with their hands. They don't know what makes someone valuable. He paused, his gaze steady. But while the hall laughed, the outsider's eyes shimmered faintly, as if holding a truth older than the stars. Before Lyra could respond to Garrett's unexpected kindness, a piercing alarm shrieked through the maintenance sector, shattering the fragile moment of connection. Red emergency lights flooded the corridor, bathing everything in a bloody hue that screamed danger. Garrett's expression shifted instantly to focus intensity. That's the reactor core, he said, already moving toward control panel. Atmospheric stabilizers. If they fail, everyone upstairs has 12 minutes before they suffocate. The alarm's pitch changed, becoming more urgent, a wailing crescendo that set Lyra's pointed ears ringing. Voices filtered down from the upper levels. Panic! Commands shouted in multiple languages, the chaos of a diplomatic crisis unfolding. Garrett pulled up a holographic schematic with a swipe of his hand, the display blooming in midair like a three-dimensional wound map. Red indicators pulsed ominously across the grid. Primary converters offline. Secondary offline. Tertiary backups not responding. He rattled off steadily, his fingers flying over the controls. Someone locked out the automated repair protocols. Lyra moved closer, her wedding dress whispering against the grated floor. Can you override it? Trying, Garrett replied, his brow furrowing in concentration. But whoever did this knew what they were doing. He glanced at her, assessing. You understand atmospheric systems? I studied xenotechnology at the Nalthran Academy before my father decided I should focus on diplomacy, she said, stepping up to the panel. Can you read Naltharian engineering protocols? Better than romantic poetry, he quipped, a ghost of a smile crossing his face despite the urgency. Pull up Terminal 3, Lyra instructed, her voice gaining confidence. Track the cascade failures backward. They worked in tandem, a seamless partnership born of necessity. Lyra's fingers danced across the interfaces she hadn't touched in years, muscle memory kicking in as she navigated the alien scripts. Found it, she said triumphantly. Someone injected a virus through the waste recycling system, but it connects to everything else, like a web spreading poison. Garrett pulled up countermeasures, his oil-stained hands moving with precision. I can purge the virus, but it'll take 4 minutes. We don't have 4 minutes, Lyra countered, her bioluminescent threads pulsing faster. The communication system crackled to life. Maintenance Division, this is Ambassador Kelvin. We have a critical emergency. It was Lyra's father, his voice strained with authority and underlying fear. She reached for the panel to respond, but Garrett caught her hand gently but firmly. If you tell them we're working on it, they'll just interrupt with questions and demands. That's my father up there, Lyra protested. The king, the entire diplomatic corps. I know, Garrett said, his grip steady, and we're their only chance. He released her hand. Trust me, no one up there believed they would even try to fix this themselves. But the silence that followed his words spread across the chamber like a storm-gathering force, heavy with unspoken doubts and the weight of impending doom. Garrett pulled out an atmospheric bypass regulator from a nearby toolkit, his movements efficient. We can't fix the system in time, he explained, but I can create a temporary bubble of processed atmosphere from the reserve tanks to the upper floors. It'll buy us 30 minutes. And then what? Lyra asked, her mind racing. Then we'll have fixed the problem, he replied matter-of-factly. His hands were steady as he connected the device. Lyra, I need you upstairs. Get everyone into the throne room and seal the doors. That's the most airtight space in the embassy. But you'll need help down here, she argued. I need you to keep them alive long enough for me to save them, he countered, activating the bypass with a series of commands. Green lights flickered on the regulator. You've got 90 seconds before people start passing out from oxygen deprivation. Lyra gathered the skirts of her wedding dress, the lace bunching in her fists, and ran. Her feet pounded against the corridors, the holographic water walls blurring into streaks of blue as she ascended. She burst into the main hall to a scene of pandemonium. Nobles clustered in frantic groups, some supporting others who had already grown weak, their blue skin paling to a sickly gray. Gasps and coughs filled the air, the preservatives in the atmosphere failing to compensate. Lyra, her father, rushed toward her, his diplomatic robes disheveled, face etched with worry. "We need to evacuate the embassy. Everyone needs to get into the throne room immediately," Lyra commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. "It's the only space that can be sealed and pressurized properly. The maintenance division should be handling this." A noble sneered, clutching his throat. "They are," Lyra shot back. "I am." She raised her voice to address the room. "Everyone move to the throne room now. Follow my directions." Some started moving, shuffling toward the grand doors, but others hesitated, looking to King Stan for guidance. The king stood on his dais, adaptive armor flickering erratically. "You dare give commands in my presence?" Stan boomed, his eyes narrowing at her. "I dare try to save your life, your majesty." Lyra met his gaze without flinching, her bioluminescence flaring defiantly. "You can punish me after you survive. Now move." For a heartbeat, she thought he would refuse, his pride overriding survival. Then one of his advisors collapsed to the floor, gasping. Stan's expression shifted. "To the throne room," he commanded quickly, his voice brooking no argument. They moved as a mass, Lyra directing traffic, like conductor in chaos. She found herself supporting an elderly Nalarian scholar, his arm heavy over her shoulders as they navigated the crowd. They reached the throne room, the heavy doors looming like ancient gates. Lyra activated the emergency protocols with a swift override, and the door sealed with a resounding thud, hiss of pressurization following. Immediately, the air quality improved, reserve oxygen flooding the space, the holographic displays confirming stable levels. Lyra moved to the environmental controls, her fingers flying over the panels to check readings. "What's happening?" Her father joined her, his presence a mix of relief and confusion. "The human mechanic, Garrett," Lyra explained. "He's fixing the system downstairs, but he needed time to buy us that bubble." "A human?" A noble muttered disdainfully. "We're trusting our lives to a human?" "You're trusting your lives to the only person here who knows how to fix what's broken," Lyra retorted sharply. "Species is irrelevant. Listen to the discarded bride." Another voice sneered from the crowd. Lyra spun, her eyes blazing. "You want to debate my qualifications while we're all minutes from death? I studied atmospheric engineering for 4 years at the academy before my father asked me to abandon it for diplomacy. I can recite the molecular composition of 17 different breathable atmospheres off the top of my head. I know exactly how long we have. 22 minutes of reserve air. So yes, I am an expert. Question me again if you dare." Silence followed her outburst, thick and stunned. Then Kingston laughed quietly, a sound that held no mockery this time. "For years of atmospheric engineering," he repeated, almost himself. "Your father never mentioned it." "Beauty and diplomacy don't fix air processors, Your Majesty," Lyra said coolly. "No, they don't." He looked at her with something like regret flickering in his eyes. "What else didn't anyone tell me about you?" And just when everyone thought the tension would break into argument or despair, something was revealed that no one expected, a depth to Lyra that shattered preconceptions. Before Lyra could answer the king's probing question, the lights in the throne room flickered ominously, dimming for a split second before stabilizing. Then an explosion echoed through the sealed doors, a muffled boom coming from the maintenance sector below. The ground trembled slightly, and dust sifted from the ceiling. Lyra was at the communication panel. In an instant, "Garrett, respond." Static crackled back, then a cough, rough and pained. "Still here." Garrett's voice came through, strained, mostly intact. "What happened?" Lyra demanded, her heart pounding. "Someone doesn't want us fixing this," he replied between coughs. "They rigged the purge system to blow when I initiated it." More coughing. "I need to manually inspect every system now." That takes time we don't have. Lyra checked her readings on the control panel. 20 minutes remaining on the bubble. What if you had help? She suggested, already formulating a plan. You can't come down here, Garrett protested. If you open those doors, the seal breaks and the bubble collapses. The ventilation system has maintenance crawlways, Lyra countered. They're separate from the main atmosphere. Absolutely not, he said firmly. They're not pressurized, and the explosion might have compromised structural integrity. Then I'll be quick. Lyra was moving toward the utility panel embedded in the throne room wall, her determination unyielding. Lyra, no. Her father grabbed her arm, his grip desperate. You can't risk yourself like this. He can't do it alone, she argued, pulling free. Not fast enough. She met her father's eyes, seeing the fear there. Dad, I studied for this exact kind of crisis. Let me use what I know. Kingston, observing the exchange, spoke up. If she fails, we all die anyway. Let her try. Lyra didn't wait for further debate. The utility panel slid open with a hydraulic whine, revealing a narrow shaft descending into the embassy's bowels. Climb down 3 levels. Garrett's voice came through her earpiece, which she'd synced earlier. Junction marked with yellow striping. Take the left branch. Got it. She hesitated for a moment, glancing at her elaborate wedding dress. The crawlway will get tight if your dress gets caught. The dress is coming off, Lyra decided decisively. She was already unfastening the intricate closures, letting the gown pool at her feet in a heap of lace and light. Underneath, she wore a simple bodysuit, practical undergarment for the ceremony. Now her armor. Behind her, a murmur rippled through the court, whispers of scandal and surprise. Practical, Garrett said with approval over the calm, smart thinking. Lyra entered the crawlway, the temperature dropping immediately as she descended into the unheated ducts. The metal was cold against her palms, and she climbed down carefully, counting levels. 1, 2, 3. There, the yellow striping on the left branch. The crawlway narrowed progressively, forcing her to turn sideways, her blue skin scraping lightly against the rough interior. Her bioluminescence pulsed, providing faint illumination in the darkness. For once, she was grateful for the soft curves that had been mocked. They allowed her to squeeze through spaces a more angular, rigid body couldn't navigate without tools or force. The crawlway finally opened into a larger corridor below. Lyra dropped down gracefully, landing in a crouch. Smoke drifted through the air, acrid and thick, stinging her eyes. Garrett, here, she called softly. She found him kneeling beside the main atmospheric processor, a massive cylindrical unit humming erratically. His arm was bleeding profusely, a makeshift bandage, torn from his own sleeve, tied around a deep gash. Shards of debris littered the floor from the explosion. You made it, he said, relief evident in his voice despite the pain. You're hurt, Lyra observed, kneeling beside him. I'm functional, Garrett insisted. He gestured to a nearby console with his good arm. I need you to access the diagnostic interface. It's an Altherian script, full glyphs, not the simplified translation. Lyra moved to the console, her fingers interfacing seamlessly. Lines of code and schematics scrolled by. Primary converters are gone, completely fried. Secondary converters at 30% capacity. Tertiary backups are locked, but undamaged, deliberately blocked with a multi-layer encryption. Can you unlock them? Garrett asked, applying pressure to his wound. Not from here, she replied. The override is physical. There's an access panel inside the reactor housing, which is currently running hot from the overload. How hot? He pressed. Lyra checked the readings. 200 degrees Celsius. That's not survivable for humans, Garrett said grimly. Or most Nolarians. Wait. Lyra's mind raced. Now, Therian physiology handles heat differently. Our homeworld in Theraprime has thermal vents and geysers. 200 degrees would hurt, like fire on skin, but I could survive it for a few minutes without permanent damage. Garrett stared at her, processing. You want to go inside an overheating reactor core. I want everyone upstairs to keep breathing, Lyra stated firmly. Including you. For a long moment, Garrett said nothing, his gray eyes searching hers. Then he pulled open a storage locker with his uninjured arm and retrieved thermal gear, a suit lined with heat-resistant alloys, gloves, and a visor. "Put this on, and take this." He handed her a plasma cutter, its handle warm from his grip. "You'll need it to breach the security plate." "Talk me through it," Lyra said as she donned the gear, the suit heavy but flexible. "The access panel is on the eastern interior wall, marked with a blue chevron," Garrett instructed. "Cut through the security plate. Behind it, 3 manual levers, red, yellow, green, in that order. Disengage the red lockout, toggle the yellow bypass, engage the green primary. Red, disengage. Yellow, toggle. Green, engage," Lyra repeated, committing it to memory. "The levers will be hot enough to burn to the thermal gloves eventually," he warned. "You have 5 minutes inside. After that, heat damage becomes irreversible, even for you. You get out no matter what." "I'll finish and I'll get out," she promised. The reactor access hatch was sealed with glaring warning symbols in multiple languages. Lyra overrode the safety locks with a code from her academy days and pulled it open. Heat rolled out like a physical blow, a wave of scorching air that made her visor fog momentarily. The interior was a hellscape of glowing pipes and throbbing energy conduits. 5 minutes, Garrett called from outside. "I'm timing you. Go." Lyra stepped into the reactor chamber. The world became fire and light, the air shimmering with distortion. The processor's core blaze at the chamber's center, a miniature sun contained by magnetic fields. Sweat beaded on her skin instantly, the thermal suit straining against the assault. She oriented herself through the haze, finding the eastern wall. There, the blue chevron pulsing faintly. The plasma cutter ignited with a high-pitched whine. She pressed at the security plate and began cutting, sparks flying as the tool sliced through reinforced alloy. 30 seconds elapsed. The plate fell away with a clang, revealing the levers. Lyra grasped the red lever first. Even through the gloves, the heat was agonizing, like gripping a branding iron. She pulled, but the lever didn't move, seized from the thermal expansion. She braced her feet against the wall, using her whole body's leverage, curves and all, as a counterweight. The lever resisted, then gave with a metallic scream that echoed in the chamber. Her hands burned now, the pain sharpening her focus. 2 minutes elapsed. Yellow lever, toggle. She gripped it and shoved sideways. The lever moved grudgingly, grinding against its housing until it clicked into place. 3 minutes. The green lever was larger, requiring both hands. Lyra wrapped her charred gloves around it and pulled with everything she had, muscles straining, breath coming in gasps. Nothing. The heat was reaching critical levels. Her vision started to tunnel, black spots dancing at the edges. For minutes, she thawed the court above, mocking her softness. Her father, protecting her with lies. King stand blind to true strength. Garrett, trusting her in the depths. Every time someone had told her she wasn't strong enough, wasn't sharp enough, wasn't perfect. Lyra screamed, a raw sound of rage, pain, and unyielding determination, and pulled again. The lever gave, moved inch by inch, engaged with sound like thunder cracking the sky. Throughout the chamber, systems came alive. Alarms shifted from red to amber, then green. The core's glow shifted from angry red to stable blue. Fans whirred into life as fresh atmosphere circulated. 5 minutes exactly. Lyra turned toward the access hatch, her legs weak, hands charred and blistering beneath the gloves. The world swayed, but she moved. One step, then another. She reached the hatch, stumbled through it, and fell forward. Garrett caught her, his good arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her away from the heat. He eased her to the floor, checking her vitals with a portable scanner. "You did it," he said, voice thick with relief. The court's breathing. Everyone's breathing fresh air now. It wasn't just knowledge that had saved them. It was legacy. The forgotten skills, the hybrid adaptability, the refusal to be defined by others' limitations. And suddenly, silence fell across the crowd upstairs as systems normalized, but down in the maintenance sector, the revelation was just beginning. Before Lyra could even process the wave of relief crashing over her, the communication system crackled again. But it wasn't her father's voice or the king's. It was someone else, female, cultured, carrying the refined inner court accent of pure-blood Nilarians. "I'm sorry, Lyra," the voice said, laced with false sweetness. "But you were never supposed to survive this." "Who is this?" Garrett demanded, helping Lyra to her feet. "Ambassador Kelvin's daughter would know my voice," the speaker continued, "though perhaps she's forgotten her own family in her earthly indulgences." Lyra's blood turned to ice in her veins. "Silvara," she whispered, her half-sister, born 8 years before Lyra, raised entirely on Thera Prime in the strict traditions of the nobility. "Very good, Silvara," the voice confirmed, now broadcasting to the entire embassy via hack channels. Screens throughout the building flickered to life with her image, a stern, elegant Nilarian woman with sharper features and unyielding eyes. "Silvara, what are you saying?" Ambassador Kelvin's voice cut in, panicked, from the throne room feed. "No mistake, father," Silvara replied calmly. "Just a plan that went awry. Lyra was supposed to die in the reactor, heroically, perhaps, but dead. The court was supposed to suffocate in a tragic accident. And I would have been next in line for succession, with no embarrassing younger sister to complicate matters. You try to murder an entire diplomatic corps." Garrett's voice was flat, controlled anger. "Not just that, a destiny." Now emotion crept into Silvara's tone, bitter and sharp. "Do you know what it's like being the eldest daughter, trained from birth for leadership, for purity of line? And then father brings back his earthborn mistake, his half-breed child from forbidden liaison with a human woman. Oh, yes, everyone knows your mother was human. Lyra, even if father pretends you're blue skin, makes you fully Nilarian." In the reactor chamber, Lyra swayed, the world tilting. "My mother was human? You know?" Silvara laughed, a cold, triumphant sound. "Oh, father," you never told her. "Yes, Lyra, your mother was a human xenobiologist stationed on Thera. Forbidden love across species lines. She died giving birth to you. Human biology wasn't compatible with Nilarian gestation. Father had you genetically modified in utero to look Nilarian, to pass as pure. Blue skin, pointed ears, bioluminescence, all artificial enhancements. You're a construct, sister. A beautiful lie designed to hide father's shame." Garrett's hand tightened on Lyra's shoulder, grounding her as everything fragmented. Her identity, her understanding of self, all shattered like the security plate in the reactor. "Even if that's true," Garrett said steadily, "it doesn't justify attempted murder on this scale. I spent 3 years planning this." Silvara confessed without remorse. A pause, and now, in 3 minutes, Earth security forces will breach the embassy. I sent them an anonymous tip about alien sabotage. They'll find everyone safe, thanks to your meddling. They'll find evidence of the virus and explosion. And they'll find a convenient culprit. "Who?" Lyra managed, her voice hoarse. "The human mechanic, of course," Silvara sneered. "Garrett, former military, dishonorably discharged for insubordination, multiple employers across sectors, a history of anti-alien sentiment in old records. Your brother was killed in the Naltherian border conflicts, wasn't he? It's all there, fabricated but flawless. The perfect suspect." Garrett's face had gone carefully blank, but Lyra saw the flicker of pain. "You've been framed," she said quietly. "Well and thoroughly," he admitted. He met her eyes. "But I didn't do this. My brother died, yes, but I don't hate aliens. I fix their ships, keep their embassies running." "I know," Lyra said. "How touching," Silvara mocked. "The half-breed and the damaged human. But it won't matter what you know. It only matters what the evidence shows." "You planted all of it," Garrett accused. "Of course. I'm thorough." Footsteps echoed in the background of the transmission, distant boots on metal. "Security will be there any moment. Either way, I win. Lyra discredited or dead. You arrested. Father ruined. Goodbye." The communication cut off abruptly. In the silence that followed, they could hear it now. Earth security forces deploying, shouts, and the clatter of gear approaching the maintenance sector. "We need to get you to your father," Garrett said, urgency returning. "Expose her before they take me. I'm also a half-human construct who apparently everyone's been lying to about my entire life," Lyra said, grasping his arm with her burned hand, ignoring the flare of pain. "Besides, you saved my life multiple times tonight. I'm not letting you take the fall for my sister's psychosis." "Lyra, no." "Listen." She pulled up the maintenance sector's communication logs on a nearby terminal, her fingers, blistered but functional, flying over the keys. Everything that happened has been recorded automatically. Every word she said, every confession, it's all here in the embassy's secure archives. "She'll have thought of that," Garrett warned. "Probably as backdoors to erase. Not if we get it to the right people first." Lyra was already copying files, encrypting them, and transferring to multiple systems. "I'm sending this to my father, to King's Than, to Earth Security Command, to the Naltherian High Court, to every major news organization in both planetary systems. Let her try to erase 100 distributed copies." Garrett watched her work, admiration in his eyes. "You're not just clever, you're strategic, ruthless when it counts." "I was raised for diplomacy," Lyra explained as the transfers completed with confirmation pings. "My father wanted me to learn how to fight with words and information instead of weapons. Turns out that actually works in crisis." The security forces reached their corridor, human soldiers in tactical gear, weapons raised, visors down. "Freeze! Hands up! Check your secure communications," Lyra interrupted boldly, stepping forward with hands visible. "Priority diplomatic channel. You'll find a complete confession from the actual perpetrator, along with evidence, motive, and full logs. We're the victims here, the ones who stopped the sabotage." The lead soldier, a stern woman with captain's insignia, hesitated, touching her earpiece. Her expression shifted from aggression to confusion, then to shock as she reviewed the data. "Stand down," she ordered her team. "We got new intel. This is a diplomatic incident with confessed Nalarian noble as suspect." To Lyra and Garrett, "You need to come with us for debriefing. The ambassador and the king are requesting immediate audience." But the final blow came not from words or accusations. It came from a name the galaxy had long forgotten. Silvara, the Shadow Sister, now hunted across stars. They were escorted upstairs under guard, but not as prisoners. The throne room doors opened to reveal organized chaos. Medical personnel treating nobles for minor hypoxia, technicians restoring full systems, holographic displays looping Silvara's confession on muted repeat. Ambassador Kelvin stood with King's Than, both transfixed by the evidence. Her father saw Lyra and moved toward her, but stopped halfway, his face a mask of guilt and sorrow. "Is it true?" Lyra asked before he could speak, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Was my mother human?" Ambassador Kelvin's face crumpled, blue tears welling. "Yes, but Lyra, I was going to tell you." "When? After I married the king? After I produced heirs, continuing to lie?" Lyra's words were sharp, but not cruel, seeking truth. "There was no lie in my love for you," he insisted. "Your mother was the love of my life, a brilliant xenobiologist who saw beyond species. You are my daughter in every way that matters. The genetic modifications were only to protect you. Being half-human would have ruined my career, exposed you to prejudice. I knew how cruel people could be about differences. I wanted to spare you that pain. Instead, you made me ashamed of what I was without even knowing what I was ashamed of," Lyra said, tears tracking down her own blue cheeks. "Did Silvara always know?" "Her mother told her years ago, out of spite," Kelvin admitted. "I didn't realize it would fester into this. I failed you both, pitting sisters against each other in my silence. I don't have to understand or forgive anything right now," Lyra said, stepping back. She turned to King's Than. "Your Majesty, I imagine our marriage arrangement is thoroughly canceled." Than stood from his throne, his adaptive armor now a subdued silver. He crossed the space and, to everyone's shock, including his own advisors, knelt before her. "Lyra, daughter of Kelvin, I rejected you for being too soft, too abundant, too different from what I thought a queen should be." He looked up, eyes meeting hers. "But tonight, you were stronger than anyone in this room. You saved us all. Your softness was resilience in the face of fire. Your curves were adaptation, allowing you to navigate where others couldn't. Your difference was exactly what we needed to survive." "You don't have to apologize," Lyra said. "I'm not apologizing for not choosing you," Sven clarified. "I'm apologizing for how I unchose you, publicly, cruelly, and I'm acknowledging that I was a fool blinded by outdated ideals." He stood. "I can't offer you the marriage arrangement again. Too much has happened, and I suspect you wouldn't accept anyway. But I can offer you recognition, honor, the title of Royal Savior, which comes with lands on Thera, independent income, and a seat on the Nalarian Council." "I don't want your titles or pity," Lyra declined. "Then what do you want?" Sven asked genuinely. Lyra looked at Garrett, still standing near the doorway, his arm bandaged by a medic. Then she looked at her father, at the king, at the assembled court that had laughed at her hours ago. "I want to be accepted for what I am, not what I appear to be, not what I was modified to be, but what I actually am." She raised her burned hands, now treated with regenerative gel. "I'm half human, half Nalarian. I'm trained in engineering and diplomacy. I'm soft in some places and strong in others. I'm exactly who I need to be, and that was always enough, regardless of lies or rejections." Silence fell across the throne room, profound and respectful. Then, from a crowd of nobles, someone began to glow, their bioluminescence pulsing a pattern that signaled deep respect and honor in ancient Nalarian tradition. Another joined, then another, until the entire chamber glowed with their light, all illuminating in recognition of what she'd done and who she was. "She's still out there," Garrett said quietly, moving to Lyra's side. "Silvara will try again. She's resourceful." "Let her try," Lyra replied, her own bioluminescence pulsing bright and steady. "Next time, I'll be ready with truth on my side." Kings then stepped forward once more. "Lyra, I meant what I said about recognition. You've shown us what true strength looks like, not in armor or edges, but in bridging gaps. But more than that, you've shown us what we've been missing, the value of bridging worlds instead of forcing everyone into narrow definitions of perfection." He gestured to his advisors. "I'm proposing something unprecedented, an ambassador-at-large position, reporting directly to both the Nalarian Crown and Earth's diplomatic corps. Your mission, to build connections between our peoples, to stand in the spaces between, and show others how to bridge them, foster exchanges, resolve conflicts, promote understanding. And I get to choose my own staff?" Lyra asked, a spark of interest igniting. "Of course," Stan confirmed. "Then I accept," Lyra said, "on the condition that Silvara, when captured, is offered rehabilitation rather than just punishment. She's damaged by resentment and lies, not inherently evil. With help, therapy, truth, she might become someone who contributes instead of destroys." Several nobles looked scandalized, murmurs rising, but Stan studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "That will be difficult, politically charged, but I'll push for it in the courts. You have my word as king." And as they walked away from the throne room that night, no one dared laugh again, for they finally understood what they had witnessed. A revolution born of rejection, forged in fire. 3 weeks later, Lyra stood in the embassy's renovated conference hall, addressing representatives from 8 planetary governments, Earth and Thera, and allies across the sector. Her hands had healed completely thanks to advanced Nalarian medicine, scars faint reminders of her trial. She wore clothing of her own design, a fusion of human tailoring and Nalarian fabrics, with translucent panels that allowed her bioluminescence to shine through unhidden, a symbol of transparency. 3 weeks ago, she began, her voice projecting confidently across the hall, I was rejected for being wrong. Wrong body, wrong nature, wrong existence. The king was mistaken, but not just about me. He was mistaken about the premise that there's a single correct way to be, to look, to think, to exist. She outlined her proposal in detail, expanded student exchange programs between Earth academies and Nalarian institutes, collaborative research initiatives on hybrid technologies, like atmospheric systems that work for multiple physiologies, educational systems teaching cultural competence, and xenobiology from early ages, joint diplomatic training to prevent misunderstandings that led to conflicts. When she finished, the room erupted not in skepticism, but in engaged questions that began with how we implement, instead of why can't we. By the end of the session, they had drafted a preliminary agreement, a framework for the interplanetary bridge, Accord, a starting point for deeper integration. As the delegates departed, buzzing with ideas, Kings then approached. "You're changing things faster than I expected, or than my advisors are comfortable with." "Not fast enough," Lyra replied. "There's so much work still to do. Prejudices don't dissolve overnight." "There always will be," Sten agreed. "That's not failure. That's the reality of progress." He smiled faintly. "I was wrong about you in every way. But the biggest mistake was thinking you needed a crown to have power. You already had something more valuable. Vision and the courage to pursue it when everyone says it's impossible." When he left, only Garrett remained in the hall, leaning against a pillar. "You did good today," he said simply. "We did good," Lyra corrected. "This only works because you've been there solving the practical problems while I talk in meetings. Your maintenance expertise is the foundation." They left together, walking through the renovated corridors. The holographic water walls now ran alongside human art installations, sculptures of earth metals intertwined with Nalarian crystals, aesthetics blended into something new, innovative, and harmonious. "Want to get dinner?" Garrett asked as they stepped into the evening air. "There's a place nearby that does fusion cuisine, literally mixes human and Nalarian cooking techniques. Spices from Earth, bioluminescent edibles from Thera. Another bridge builder?" Lyra teased. "Something like that." He grinned. "Then yes." They walked into the city together, colleagues and friends evolving into something more. Two people who'd found each other in the chaos of near-death, bound by shared trials and mutual respect. Above them, stars were emerging in the twilight sky, stars that shone on Earth and Thera and 1,000 other worlds. All different, all connected by invisible threads of gravity and possibility. Lyra looked up and smiled. She'd been rejected for being too much, too different, too wrong. But being exactly yourself, complicated, hybrid, imperfect, and real, was always the most revolutionary act of all. In a universe that kept trying to sort everyone into neat categories, refusing to fit was its own kind of power, the kind that changed everything. In a universe built on arrogance and division, sometimes a single act of dignity is enough to shift the stars themselves. And when others finally see what they refuse to recognize, that difference is not deficit but destiny. The revolution has already begun.